Right, so to kick us off, Josephine.
Never bet against an Antiva, Commander.
Josephine Charette Montillier is the Antivan-born ambassador to the Inquisition. She spent many years as the chief ambassador for Antiva to Orlais, and is fond of Orlesian culture, particularly their theatre. She is a friend of Leliana's, who recruited her into the Inquisition. Exactly how and when they met and became friends is unclear. Josephine was briefly a bard in her youth, bard being the Orlesian code word for spy, so they may have moved in the same circles during that time, or met later. We don't really know. What we do know is that they met at a very boring party in Orlais, which they left to stir up some mischief. Which is hard to imagine, knowing Josephine as we do. So I think we can assume that Leliana kind of led her astray a little bit there. Just can't imagine Josephine running away from a party to stir up some mischief. But you know, Josephine does say that Leliana is very much like a sister to her though, and if you embark on a romance with Josephine, Leliana gets a little bit protective of her and sort of tries to warn you off in a kind of like don't hurt me mate kind of a way, which I find a little bit sweet. It's a little bit sweet. I mean, it's a little bit overprotective, but it's a little bit sweet as well. I kind of like it. So during her brief stint as a bard, Josephine got into a scrap with another bard and accidentally killed him. When she took off his mask, she realised that she knew him and instantly regretted her actions. She renounced the bard life after that, and violence in general. She's a bit of a pacifist, Josephine. I mean, she's not completely a pacifist because she works for the Inquisition, who has a standing army, so like, you know, she's not completely a pacifist. But yeah, she's generally very against killing people, which doesn't sound unreasonable. Like, in the real world, that's not unreasonable. Like, I'm rather against killing people as well. I can tell you, I have not killed a single person in my lifetime. That, you know, that's my record. Zero people I have killed. Which is quite normal. But in the world of video games, encountering someone who doesn't just want to, like, stab all of their enemies is actually quite rare. She's a rare little duckling, is Josephine, and I sort of like that about her, that she's just kind of like, you know, everybody else is always just sort of like, well, we'll kill them. You know, they're a problem, we'll kill them. Josephine's like, no, let's not. Let's find another way. So she is the eldest daughter of 5 children. We know that she has at least 2 brothers and a sister, Yvette, who we meet during Wicked Eyes and Wicked Hearts. I think, like, the 5th child is never specifically mentioned, but I think we're inclined to believe that it's another brother. Because she sort of, you know, she talks about her sister and her brothers. And 2 of the brothers we get mentioned by name, but the 3rd one doesn't, but I think we're supposed to assume that it's like 3 brothers and 1 sister. As the eldest, she is the heir to the estate and therefore in charge of everything. So this is apparently Antivan custom to sort of get her used to running things before our parents pop off. She's sort of like, you know, she's the eldest, so she's in charge of everything. Yes, so the Montillier family is unfortunately not in the best financial position. They were once a great trading family with a huge fleet of merchant ships and even warships to protect them. This got them mixed up in numerous rivalries with Raveni pirates, but their real downfall came when they were banned from trading in Orlais due to a falling out with the Duparaquets, an Orlesian noble family, which was apparently quite scandalous and dramatic. It was also over 300 years ago, so Josephine is currently trying to get her family permission to trade with Orlais again, because it's sort of like, you know, they've probably forgotten about all that nonsense by now. Or so you would think, but doing this unfortunately results in her getting hunted down by assassins. And this triggers her personal quest, during which you can engage in a series of convoluted war table missions to try and sort things out, or you can pick Leliana's solution and just have her agents destroy the contract on Josephine's life. Josephine isn't fond of that solution, however, as people may be hurt in the process, and she's a sweet little bunny rabbit who doesn't want that. Like I've said, she just doesn't want people getting hurt. She'd rather, like, go through the most convoluted way possible than risk anybody getting hurt. But yeah, whichever way you decide to resolve the matter, Josephine does eventually restore her family ties in Orlais and start working towards rebuilding their fortune. It's also worth noting that, like, if you do take Leliana's solution and send her agents in to destroy the contract on Josephine's life, Josephine isn't angry with you. Like, she sort of laments it and sort of says she wishes that, you know, it could have been done differently. She kind of regrets that that's what had to happen, but she's not angry with you. She's just sort of like, yeah, it's a shame that we had to do it that way, but you know, it all worked out in the end. Josephine is a romance option for both male and female inquisitors, and if you pursue the romance, you will discover that her parents have betrothed her to an Antivan lord against her wishes. She is trying to get out of the engagement, and if you plan to cement the romance, you must duel her fiancé for her honour, which happens to be one of the most hilarious scenes in the game. Like, literally, it is worth doing the romance just for that. The romance itself is generally quite boring, but, like, the whole thing is worth it for that one scene. Though, weirdly, and I do find this really weird, if you don't romance her, the whole I've been betrothed to a stranger against my will thing just never comes up. Like, she just never mentions it. Like, presumably her parents still betroth her to someone. And presumably she finds a way out of it because, you know, she's not married come trespasser. But, like, it's just like she just never mentions it. Like, you think she would? You think it would come up as a thing, wouldn't it? It would be like, oh, by the way, my parents have, you know, betrothed me to this guy and I'm trying to get out of it. But, no, it just never comes up. So I always think that's weird. But anyway. So Josephine may appear to be a sweet and cuddly bundle of loveliness, and she is, trust me, she is, but she is as wily as a Dalish hunter, and very politically savvy. So she's very well versed in the Orlesian game, which you don't survive by being a pushover, trust me, and she is a master at dealing with stroppy nobles. So, yeah, she's one of those characters that she appears all sweet and lovely on the surface. And she is all sweet and lovely, but she's tough as nails. She really is. Like, she's got steel going through her. She's not a little pushover, is our Josie. She's quite down to earth as well for a noble, I always think. She's not like all snobby and up herself. Like, it's obvious that she's accustomed to fine living, and she struggles a little bit to adjust to life at Haven. But she also has a great respect for the workers, and seems to advocate for them. Like, there's a few letters and notes and things that you can find around Skyhold, where she's sort of like, you know, make sure they're fed, make sure they're paid, you know, we need our workers, we need to keep them happy, you know, we rely on them. She's got her head screwed on. She's not like, I mean, I know there is a bit, like, in her personal quest where she sort of laments the fact that the Montiliers are in debt and, you know, but they've still got, like, vineyards and ships and things like that and great estates and stuff, and the Inquisitor can kind of be a bit like, yeah, you're not exactly living in poverty, love. But she's not disconnected from reality, is Josie. She, you know, and she's not like really, but she's not sort of like, you know, let them eat cake. That's not Josie. She's more down to earth than that. She's got her head screwed on. She knows how the world works, and she, you know, she has respect for everybody. So yeah, I mean, of all three of your advisors, I think she's the one who's most got her head screwed on. She's the one I trust the most. Like, Liliana could be a bit mental. And sort of just wants to, like, throw assassins at everything. And then Cullen, like, his entire solution for everything is just soldiers. Just whatever it is, soldiers. Throw soldiers at it. I don't care what the problem is. Just soldiers. All we need is soldiers. And Josephine, I feel like Josephine's, like, the critical thinker. She's like, you know, I trust Josie. I trust Josie with my Inquisition. She's always very calm, always very polite, never loses her cool, except in the Trespasser DLC. But she is completely justified. I kind of love it in the Trespasser DLC that she has a moment where she just, like, completely freaks out because she is trying to sort of hold the political situation in the whole of the south of Thedas together, and she doesn't feel like she's getting much support from the Inquisitor or the other two advisors because we're kind of running around trying to stop a Qunari invasion, and she's sort of like, I am dealing with all of these negotiations on my own, and she just freaks out. And I respect her for that because I think she's right. I do think the Inquisitor handles the whole Trespasser situation terribly, and yeah, so I like Josephine, I do. And we are going to get to go to Antiva in Veilguard, I think, so I kind of hope that she turns up. I know they've said that there won't be many returning characters, there won't be many cameos, because, what was it they said? Something like it cheapens it or something like that, and I was thinking, fuck off, no it doesn't. Cameos are amazing. I love it when past characters come back in little cameos. They've said that there won't be many, which I'm quite sad about, but like, a little Josie cameo would be lovely. If she could just turn up, just in a little scene somewhere, I would be very grateful. That would be, I like Josie a lot. Right, next up, Justinia the Fifth. Okay, here we go. She's an interesting one, is old Divine Justinia, because she plays a huge role in the games and yet hardly ever appears in them. She appears more in the books, but even then, she's mostly like a background figure. We see her more through Leliana and Cassandra, who are her left and right hands. So Leliana is her left hand and spy master, and Cassandra is her right hand and sort of bodyguard, I want to say, kind of. And we sort of see Justinia's actions through them more than anything. While Justinia herself remains quite a distant, enigmatic figure who he can never quite get to, which is fitting, really, as she is the Divine. I mean, that is how she should be. You know, somebody who you can't quite get to, like the Queen, you know? She's just, you know, she's there, you can see her, but you just can't quite get to her. And I sort of like that. I think they did it quite well. She's sort of mysterious. You don't feel like you can ever really know her, even through the people who did know her. So she was originally known as Dorothea and was a chantry mother at the chantry in Valence. She had something of a colourful past, engaging in various criminal activities, and even got mixed up with the bard Marjolaine, which is how she first met Leliana, helping her escape when Marjolaine betrayed her. And yes, you encounter Dorothea during the Leliana song DLC for Origins, where she helps Leliana escape. She would later go on to become a revered mother, and when Divine Beatrix III died, she named Dorothea as her successor. So this is what divines do, they name a successor. But even when they've named a successor, that successor still needs to be voted in unanimously by the revered mothers. And Dorothea was a bit of a controversial choice because she had such a colourful past. But she did get voted in as divine. Yeah, but she had a lot of enemies, like a lot of people weren't happy about it. So she called on Leliana to become her left hand and her spy master to help protect her from them. And then she also recruited Cassandra as her right hand because Cassandra had already been Beatrix III's right hand, so she just kind of kept Cassandra on. Justinia was a wily player of the Orlesian game, very savvy, but she also had a compassionate heart. When she first became divine, she turned her attention to the Circle of Magi, believing that it needed overhauling. She could see the brewing mage rebellion, I think, and she was trying to sort of like, temper the situation. She began investigating the treatment of mages under the Circle, particularly by the Templars, and secretly researching ways to protect weaker-willed mages from demonic possession without resorting to the Rite of Tranquility. So she had this whole secret project going on, sort of unbeknownst to everybody else, where she was trying to find an alternative to the Rite of Tranquility, which resulted in the cure to tranquility being discovered and sent to all of the circles in Thedas by Wynne, interestingly. Yes, and that sort of played quite a big part in the Mage Rebellion. But anyway, unfortunately, the Circle and the Chantry were stuck in their ways, and even as divine, she found she lacked the influence to make significant changes, at least not quick enough to prevent the mages from rebelling. So during the initial Mage Revolt at the White Spire, I realise this is all getting a bit confusing. I need to do a full video on how the rebellion started, because it's complicated as hell. Like, I was looking into it for one of my fanfictions recently, and it's like trying to figure out how the French Revolution happened. It is that complicated. Or like World War One. You know when you try to figure out how World War One started, and you're just like, yep, no idea. They're like, it's more complicated than it appears just from playing the games, because so much of it happens in the books, and it's just like, yeah, so I need to do a full video on it, but we don't have time to discuss it all here. But needless to say, there was a revolt at the White Spire, right? And that was like one of the turning points in how the Mage Rebellion kicked off. And during the revolt, Justinia aided the rebel mages, which contributed massively to the Templars breaking from the Chantry, because they had seen that, like, the Divine supported the rebel mages when they broke away from the Circle. So the Templars were like, well, we're not following you anymore then, and they broke from the Chantry as well. So at the height of the Mage-Templar War, Justinia held a conclave to conduct peace talks, but the conclave was hijacked by Corypheus, who assassinated her in a magic ritual. I don't really know why he chose her to assassinate particularly. I don't know whether, like, it was just to make a statement. It was like, oh, we'll kill the Divine and, then everybody will know and it'll be this huge thing. That's the only reason I can think of why he chose her specifically. But yes, he assassinates her in his magic ritual. It then transpires that Justinia had been planning to reinstate the Inquisition of old to restore order, clearly believing that the Chantry had lost its way and was beyond redemption, at least in its current form. She had sent Cassandra and Leliana in search of both the hero of Ferelden and Hawke to lead the Inquisition, which I find hilarious. Can you imagine Hawke as the Inquisitor? Like, really? Hawke? Really? Like, no, fuck off. That would have been a disaster. And then even, like, the hero of Ferelden, I'm a bit like, what? Like, the hero, yeah, alright, they're a hero who, like, stopped the Fifth Blight and everything, yeah, but they're also just, like, they're a Grey Warden. Like, they've got nought to do with the Chantry. The Chantry isn't their problem. They're busy trying to, like, fight the Darkspawn and everything. Like, no. Come on, really? Yes, but luckily the Herald of Andraste rocks up, and Hawke doesn't need to don the Inquisitor hat, which I think is a relief to all of us. Yes, anyway, Justinia, or something claiming to be her, appears in the Here Lies the Abyss quest, guiding you through the Fade and revealing that it was her who pushed you through the Fade Rift, not Andraste. It's never really revealed whether what you encounter in the Fade is Justinia, a memory of her, a ghost, a spirit posing as her, who knows. But she saves you all the same. So yes, that's your little encounter with Justinia. Next up, Justice. So Justice is a spirit from the Fade who you encounter in the Awakening DLC for Origins. So, let's have a little chat about the difference between spirits and demons. So they're basically the same thing, spirits and demons. The only difference is demons represent negative emotions like anger or sloth, right? Whereas spirits represent more benign emotions like compassion or justice in this case. That does not mean that they are reliably good. However, the spirits can act on impulse rather than logic. In the case of justice, this has ultimately tragic consequences, but also what I find interesting is I believe spirits can be corrupted into demons. I don't know whether demons can be restored into spirits, but it seems like they're kind of two sides to each other. So you've got Justice, who is the spirit, and then you've got, let's say, Vengeance, which is the demon. So, like, you know, whether they're a demon or a spirit sort of depends on whether they're portraying something good or something bad, but the something good can turn into something bad. There's sort of like, everything's two sides of a coin. So, like, for example, you could have pride and dignity. Now, we never encounter a dignity spirit in the games. That's not lore. This is me just coming up with stuff out of my head. But you've got pride demons, right? So let's say the good equivalent to pride would be dignity. So say you have a spirit of dignity who could be corrupted into a demon of pride, right? There is a reason why I'm mentioning this. It will become relevant in a moment. So, the Warden Commander first encounters Justice when they search the Black Marsh in Awakening for the lost Grey Warden Kristoff. When the Warden and company finds Kristoff's dead body, they are transported to the Fade, where a powerful mage named the Baroness has trapped the area's former townspeople in the Fade so that she can feed off their life essences. I believe she is also possessed by a demon. So, yes. The townspeople try to fight the mage to gain their release. This would incidentally mean their death, because their bodies have long since withered away, but that's still better than being stuck in the mage's purgatory. A spirit embodying justice takes up their cause, takes the form of a knight in plate armour, and leads their assault against the mage. The Warden Commander can either fight alongside the spirit, or back the Baroness, who promises to send them back to the real world if they do. That is the virtual world made of pixels that is Dragon Age. Can you tell Fred wrote this script? That's a Fred joke, right? That's definitely a Fred joke. Whichever side the Warden takes, they all ended up transporting back to the real Black Marsh, whereupon the Spirit of Justice finds that it has been fused with the now reanimated corpse of Kristoff. Yes, so the Justice has ended up trapped inside Kristoff's body, and Kristoff is now like a reanimated corpse. But it's not Kristoff, it's Justice. Exactly how and why this happened is unclear, as is so many things like this in the Dragon Age universe. You know, it happened, don't question it, just like magic and shit, alright? It's fine. Justice itself is as surprised as anyone, but has to deal with it. Since it literally has nothing else better to do, Justice opts to continue on as the Grey Warden Kristoff would have, and fight with the Warden Commander against the Darkspawn. A side quest where Justice meets Kristoff's widow concludes with her requesting that the spirit avenge her husband's death. Justice becomes a companion character in Awakening, a warrior with some unusual powers based on the fact that it is a Fade spirit inhabiting what is, practically speaking, a zombie. Which is true, and it kind of bothers me because presumably Kristoff's body is like decaying. Like, how long before he just becomes a skeleton? It bothers me a lot. Justice is polite and quite formal. He is also a still rotting zombie. Like I've just said, a fact which he apologises for. He tells one of the companions he cannot stop, and this will eventually reach a point where all the flesh has fallen away and he just becomes a walking skeleton. Yeah, like I just said, which is like, yeah, maybe that's better than a rotting corpse though. I think like a walking skeleton is better than a rotting corpse. But then the thing that always bothers me when you've got walking skeletons in fantasy is like, there's nothing holding the bones together. Like, don't like all the tendons and things hold the joints together. So how are they all kind of like, I don't understand. But, you know, magic, innit? It's magic. But, anyway, we never get to the point where we find out what happens if Justice rots away to a skeleton. Because, yes, he returns in Dragon Age 2 in a completely different form. He now inhabits the body of the mage Anders. Technically making Anders an abomination, but it's a bit more complicated than that. Because an abomination is a mage who is possessed by a demon/spirit. Typically, they completely lose themselves, though. They like completely lose who they are and they just become a raving monster, right? There are a few instances in the games where people have been possessed by spirits/demons and they don't lose themselves. They sort of like both coexist within the body. So Wynne is one example. She has a spirit sort of possessing her. Anders has Justice possessing him. Flemeth, of course, is possessed by a demon, in inverted commas. Yeah, so there's a few instances of people getting sort of possessed, but not really becoming an abomination. I think they need another word. They need another word for people who are possessed, but still kind of retain their self. Yes, so we learn that when Justice was no longer able to retain its hold on the dead Warden Christoph, Anders offered his body as a vessel. Justice remains for the most part submerged inside the mage, but emerges whenever Anders becomes angry or outraged at a perceived injustice. Justice resents being suppressed by Anders, and this turns the entity into a demon, Vengeance. So Justice the spirit became Vengeance the demon. Yes, but Anders does say that when they have originally, joined together, they hoped that, it would turn Anders into a force of justice to sort of help the mages. That was, the original plan. It didn't really go that way, so the joining altered both of them. It altered both Anders and Justice. So Anders was previously frivolous, pleasure-seeking, and self-centered. And once fused with Justice, he becomes a selfless activist for mages, as well as a general do-gooder type, runs a healing clinic in Kirkwall. He also becomes much more self-righteous and angry over the position of mages in Thedas, because he's turned Justice into vengeance, so now he's consumed with vengeance. He's a lot more serious, he's a lot less fun. And yes, as I've said, this in turn transforms Justice into a spirit of wrath that emerges when Anders becomes upset and loses his self-control. So Anders becomes a glowing-eyed lyrium ghost with a classic booming, echoing voice that warns others to, fear my vengeance and all that. So Anders can't actually control when Justice comes out. He just sort of comes out at random moments, and when Justice comes out, Anders is not in control. You can actually meet Justice, actual Justice, in his original form, in Dragon Age 2, if you take Anders into the Fade with you during Fainriel's quest. Rather than having Anders appear, Justice will appear, and he is Justice. He's not Vengeance, he's Justice. So he's only Vengeance when he's sort of with Anders, but by taking Anders into the Fade, it sort of seems to briefly separate them, and Justice becomes himself again. And you can sort of speak to him. But then the moment you come out of the Fade, he's back joined with Anders. It's kind of sad. Interestingly, originally there was an idea to have Valana be the companion that came across from Awakening, and she was going to be possessed by Justice. And I'm really pleased they didn't do that, because it would have made less sense. But also, I really like Valana. Valana's one of my favourite companions across all three games. And yeah, I would have been absolutely outraged if they had sort of made her the sort of, yes, vengeance-fueled mage possessed by Justice. And finally, Jar of Bees. Yes, you heard me. Jar of Bees. The Jar of Bees is a grenade that can be crafted in Inquisition. It is the best item that you can equip on your companions. Excellent for use against dragons and demons in particular. It can only be acquired if you recruit Sarah, as she possesses the special kind of genius needed to come up with such an idea. So once you recruit Sarah, a war table operation will become available where you can track down a man apparently skilled at jarring bees. That's putting bees in a jar, not shocking them. Well, I've really jarred those bees. Yes, he's skilled at putting bees, not G's, but fuck's sake, woman, putting bees in a jar to be thrown in combat. So once you complete the operation, Sarah will approve, but more importantly, you will have bees. So yes, they can be equipped in one of your grenade slots and are crafted from blood lotuses, which any sane person will grow in the Inquisition's garden, so that you never have to go without bees, because oh my god, bees are the best. Yes, it is my personal recommendation that you equip all of your companions with bees, because all other grenades and potions pale in comparison to the mighty bees. Also, chucking bees at Corypheus in the final battle is more than a little bit hilarious, and something that the bards will doubtless sing about for centuries to come. How the Great Inquisitor defeated Corypheus by chucking bees at him. Yes, just try not to think too much about the welfare of the bees that you are trapping in a glass jar and then throwing at deadly creatures. Just don't think about that. Don't worry yourself with that. So yes, genuinely, Jar of Bees, best thing that you can equip in the game. And if Veilguard does not contain the Jar of Bees as a weapon, it will have failed in its mission as Inquisition's successor, in my honest opinion. So there we go. So that was Jay. Right, honourable mentions. Yes, only 3 for you today. We've got Jowan, but quite frankly, fuck Jowan. I can't be dealing with Jowan. We've got Jaws of Hakon from the Jaws of Hakon DLC. for Inquisition. And Jarvia, which Fred wrote me a script for, but I've cut it out. Sorry, Fred. I feel like I'm cutting out a lot of Fred's script. I'm sorry, Fred. I'm sorry. I kept your Justice script. We'll cover Jarvia in a part 2. We'll do a part 2, and we'll put Jarvia in the part 2. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'm sure there's probably other J words that I just haven't kind of thought of. But yes, anyway, so that was Jay. Thank you again to Fred, who did write the Justice script for me. He's still hard at work in the attic. He was complaining of bleeding fingers yesterday, but it's fine. I'm sure he can type with his toes. It's fine. Yes, it's fine, Fred. It's fine. You just keep working. It's fine.